Hello, and welcome to the Weekly Scroll Podcast. My name is Ryan.
My name is Michael.
And my name is Galen.
And yeah, these are two of our special guests with us today, Michael Elliott and Galen Pejeau.
Joe. Yes.
Yeah. Today, talking with us about their upcoming ZineQuest project that is going to be Fealty. Before we get to Fealty, though, Michael, Galen, who the heck are you guys? Why should people know who you are? Especially considering like the stack of games I have by one or both of you here next to me. Let's just start with Michael. So Michael, like what would people know you from for past things that you have created?
Yeah, well, I'm Michael Elliott. I'm a writer and game designer. I have made single player games and games with strong anti-capitalist themes. So you might know me from A Torch in the Dark or Neon Black or The Fall of House Prosh, Nasty, Brutish, and Long. I'm literally just trying to name things that Ryan might have on hand right now. And Merger. Yeah, Merger. Weekly Scroll was one of the first people that like rated Merger, like had it on the stream, and that was really cool.
Yeah, Merger was great. Merger was actually, my opinions on Blades of the Dark are well known.
Yep.
But Merger it was just a great game, and honestly, one of the early Forged in the Dark games that I picked up and read, and then realized, oh, this is Forged in the Dark, but taken to a different kind of direction. It was super fun. I think that was one of our early reviews too. It was really super fun game. I mean, that's the one that was like, I need to follow this person for the rest of the stuff that they write. So that was a great one.
Nice, thank you. Fun fact: Merger is the only game that my mom has played that I've made. So
Good to know.
fun.
I don't even know if my mom knows I have a podcast. So yeah.
There you
Galen, same question. Like, what would people know you from? Like, what should they have in their collections from Galen Pejeau?
You might have something from me already because I've jobbed it as an illustrator on a lot of indie games. Character sheets for things as big as Starforged and as little as, well, the free stuff I give away on my itch site. But let's see, Dead Belt. I illustrated Stoneburner, a game of space dwarves and space mines fairly recently. Oh, excellent. I don't even have a copy of that yet. I'm jealous. And gosh, I can't even list it. So rather than that, more than the on design end, I like to make games about communities primarily, and anything that lets me draw robots that haven't been drawn before. So in things that I've done, you've got, I believe, a copy of The Facility, my most recent project.
If I can find it, it's somewhere in the plethora, but I can't quite get my hands on it.
It's perfect that it would be lost, though, because it's a game of amnesiac scientists trying to escape an insane mechanical labyrinth. Yes, that one. And also Crash Cart, a game of near-future cyberpunk paramedics, which I'm hoping to get revisit sometime this year once we've gotten through Fealty.
Crash Cart is one of my absolute favorite Forge of the Dark things. It's awesome.
We met kind of geeking out about each other's projects mutually because Torch in the Dark really spoke to me on a really fundamental level. I didn't think anybody could do solo Forged in the Dark, but Michael nailed it.
Thank you.
Both of you seem to have a lot of Forged in the Dark stuff. I guess what draws you both to that mechanic, I guess, or that subsystem?
For me, it was, I don't know, Blades of the Dark was the game that kind of brought me back into RPGs in a way. Because like I got started with like a 4th edition D&D campaign years ago, and that lasted like 7 years. And I had to take a break after that and be like, I need to not be in a fantasy world for a minute. But eventually like played in some 5th edition games, ran a couple games, but then started to branch out into like indie stuff like Fiasco and like The Quiet Year and stuff like that. And I saw Blades and played through it, and I was like, wow, this is everything I wanted in role-playing games and didn't know you could do. Like characters that not only like advance in levels, but advance in like complications and like personality changes and quirks, and like this living, breathing world that reacts to the characters, and really interesting fiction first mechanics. And also you can just make your own version if you want. The SRD was free online. So yeah, that coupled with like having like a really weird creative block at that time in life with creative writing, I wanted to make things, but I could not face writing stories. So making games is like a happy little medium spot. So yeah, I've fell in love with it, and it's just kind of my go-to thing when I want to think of game design and making games. Like it's just such a great template. So
It's weird. We never talked about it, but it was very much the same sort of thing, but on the art end. That back when Blades was getting run up for its Kickstarter, I had a newborn and had a lot of sleepless late nights on just hanging around, like holding a baby and being on G Plus and reading about RPGs, which I had also taken a long break from. And just the way that John Harper was synthesizing game mechanics and the fiction of his world and the integration of that with his system of layout, and the whole thing was just like a light opened up in the way it could be done, and how games could be made. And I started doing fan art on G Plus, and that's what brought me back into illustrating, or really started me illustrating, because I hadn't really done anything artistic in almost a decade at that point. And it was just so much fun, and everybody in those communities was just so nice that it just kind of slowly dragged me in. And now here I am doing it and making a living on it.
There we go.
You all are just the best indie gamers out there. I love you all.
I would have to make something to be included in that. I just critique them, so I'll take that. But so you said you guys had, when the stream started, you said you guys have never, so you worked on this, you've known each other for quite a while at this point, but have never actually met in person or even had a conversation. What how did you work as long, I guess, know each other as long and not like sit down and do that? Just life gets in the way, or and then to kind of merge that into another question. What was the impetus to finally get together to work on this project that we're going to be talking about in just a moment?
So yeah, well, like we said before, like we've been kind of fans of each other's work for a while. I've been kind of like checking with each other. Like I feel like it was like at least a couple times a year, one of us to be like, "Hey, I have this like cool idea. Is this cool?" And the other was like, "Yeah, that's awesome." It's like, "Cool. Do you want to like, should we do something with it?" And then be like, "Yeah, don't really have the time. Don't really have other thing." And like we've done like work exchanges before. Like I did a client for Crash Cart.
Mm-hmm.
Then Galen did a cover for a game, which I still haven't released, but it's we've done a lot of stuff like that, like trading ideas and like kind of like hyping each other up. And like flirted a lot with the idea of doing something together eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day Galen messaged me, he's like, "Hey, have you ever read Wolf Hall?" I was like, "No, I haven't." He explained it's like this fictional telling of like the court of King Henry VIII and Thomas Cromwell, and how he rose from like basically being a poor like blacksmith's boy in the streets of London to basically running England.
Mm-hmm.
And like there might be a game in there. I was like, okay, sure. So I read it and I was like, yeah, let's fucking do it. So yeah, it was just kind of like right place, right time. ZineQuest was right around the corner, so
Mm-hmm. It is it's very game brained to read such a magnificent novel, and I hope appreciate it, but also at the same time think, wait a sec, that guy's a protagonist. That's a PC. Like, I can see where this mechanic can immediately spring out. And so I had a lot of very, very abstract, scatterbrained ideas about chess pieces and tokens, and not much in the way of mechanics. I'm okay at mechanics at best. I much prefer to be thinking about the worlds and the people inside of them. And I knew that Michael was absolutely the one for that, because every one of those games that we listed earlier have just got a very clean throughput of mechanics to them. They're a lot of fun to play. So yeah, it seemed to be the right idea at the right time.
Yeah, and it sounds great. So what is what is Fealty then? What's the pitch? Like, I know you just said about the Cromwell novel and whatnot, but like what game is that now becoming?
Hmm. It is. Oh, go ahead, please.
No, you go first. I've been going first all the time.
All right, fair. I've never actually done one of these interviews before, so I'm trying to let Michael show me the way. I usually prefer to let the art just exist than to talk about it. But the game is everybody who is playing is primarily somebody else not of noble birth who has been elevated to a royal court through their skills, their charms, their accomplishments, and they are various forms of kind of Thomas Cromwell's or other Renaissance and Tudor archetypes, kind of Shakespearean characters. The monarch is represented by a deck of cards and is just an all too human and fallible individual presenting all sorts of whims and problems to the court. And so the players are stuck in this unfortunate rock and a hard place situation between a king or queen making unreasonable demands and being just an absolute selfish piece of work, and then the needs of the entire kingdom below them that they have to run, which they have a foot in both of those worlds. And so it just seemed like there was a lot of dramatic juice to be gained from that. That's who you are in that game. Does that sound right with you, Michael?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
It is fundamentally based on the belonging outside belonging system by Avery Alder. So from like Dream Apart, Dream Askew, Galactic 2E, which is like a great Star Wars take on it. And yeah, it's basically just about, it is very much like fiction first, about inhabiting these characters and like kind of world building as you go. And like I said, I'm kind of being stuck with this monarch who has different whims on any given day that might run counter to what the country needs or what the courtiers can even do. There could be questions like succession or like weird magical weapons of mass destruction, or the monarch gets hyper focused on the fact that like they went through a tour through the capital and there was a bunch of poor people, and can you all just do something about that, please? Meanwhile, you all know that like everyone's starving, there's an army marching on the nation, and stuff like that. So it's very much like trying to imagine what it's like to be these people in this possible situation. And like Keeley, like, because it is very much influenced by Wolf Hall, like all these people are not noble born. These are all like commoners who have been elevated because of their achievements or because of where they happen to be at the time. And so they're trying to navigate this space, and we're trying to like provide the mechanics and the set pieces to like really highlight the high drama, almost like Shakespearean aspects of that, of just being like, yeah, in this impossible place, trying to manage your own life, trying to manage a whole country, and just following the themes and the stories that can arise from that, basically. And
That
also
sounds-
saying fuck you to the monarchy, basically. It's a very important point, I think.
Yeah.
The whole time reading Wolf Hall, I couldn't help but think, why don't they just grab Henry and stick him in a sack and throw it in the Thames?
Right?
It was unimaginable in that time. It was like in the way that we get caught into our own systems and are completely blinded by the boundaries that we set within ourselves. That was very clearly part of what Cromwell was experiencing in that book. And we wanted to kind of present why that would be, how you could feel that experience of being in that tiny little community and bound by these sort of invisible laws.
Yeah, so I haven't read Wolf Hall, but like that kind of piece in fiction, I assume often based on Cromwell, of like this king who's just kind of fucking around or doing whatever, or like just, and then the people that are actually running things. You're like, yeah, that is such a gameable like moment, I guess. It is really interesting that I haven't even heard of a game that would do something like that or be in that context of this backdrop of, like you said, this multifaceted, like you have to do what the king is saying, you also have to run the country, but if bringing a personal life into it too, that's such a heavy spot to be in, and like you said, complete super gameable. And I love the on the Fealty banner you have like the pawns all in a circle, and then it's making a crown with a shadow. That's such a good imagery of like everything that you're talking about.
Good. It's so good. But as soon as Galen showed that to me, I was like, what the art? What?
It turns out I'm not the first person to have thought of it, but it fits so well for what we're aiming for that I had to delay with it. So there, you may find it out that if you search for that, you can find other people that have done so many things with chess pieces. But that's why they make such good tokens for this. They're inherently, I love making games that can use stuff you have around the house already that aren't just polyhedrals. That is definitely.
Speaking of tokens, so there are tokens in this game. I know you just said there are chess pieces. So if people are playing the game, like what do the tokens have to do with the game, or how are they used in the context of playing the game? I know you had mentioned a deck of cards as well.
Yeah, so the tokens are kind of like the currency of like your move set. So like when you're trying to like influence things at court, or like have your way, or like put your mark on the fiction in some way, usually spending a token, and those are represented by the pawns. Or you're gaining tokens when you make like a back foot move, which is like being kind of annoying, or like distancing yourself from the monarch, stuff like that. And then each player also has two of the other pieces, so like the rooks or whatever. One of it represents their place at court, and specifically how close they are to the throne. So there'll be like a court sheet that'll keep track of like how many resources there are in the kingdom, and also how much in favor you are with the monarch. And so the closer your piece is to the throne, you'll get like bonuses, like you'll get more tokens each round, and you will also be kind of expected to attend to the monarch's random whims with like plans of action. And then also, so because there's two of every like piece in the chess set, you have like the 2 castles, 2 rooks, 2 bishops. I'm trying to remember chess pieces now, and for some reason I can't. The other one is this token you start with, and that specifically represents like your favor, which could like literally be like a seal, or like a promise or a vow. And you spend those as tokens, but they also kind of like, because they are unique, you can kind of track them as they move between player and player, and like they can kind of represent like favors you've called in and stuff like that. And yeah, that's basically what the tokens are. You can use other stuff, like I think chess set was a great shout out by Galen, because like one of the reasons I like the Blades of the Dark and Forge of the Dark system is because it relies on d6s. Pretty much everyone has 6-sided dice, but also pretty much everyone has a chess set, right? Like you might not have used it in a while, and if you don't, they're really cheap to get. And even if you can't get those things, like you can use poker chips, you can use dice, you can use other things, but like it also does put you in the mind of like strategy and like trying to think, several moves ahead, and like, the great game and stuff like that. Yeah.
It's the same with the playing cards. As somebody who's been quite fixated on them, the art on your current, like your bicycle deck of cards, what we think of as the standard deck, those portraits really solidified right around the time period we're talking about. And it's just weird. It's another relic that's been kind of caught with us and carried on down through the years since then.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're going to do a game about court, there really aren't two better things to have than a chess piece, which is literally like the members of like court and royalty and everything, and then like you said, like a deck of cards where the faces are literally royalty. So I can imagine that not only what the pieces themselves do, like you said, Michael, about like moving, like keeping, getting your head in a strategic standpoint, but also just the fact that there is that kind of like artistic bend to it as well. It's so multifaceted to have those specific tokens into a game about this. So those are, I'm excited to see how it feels to have those on the board as well as the game. And then the illustrations, because so next to me, there's running this thing that's got, the art and what going through. So talk to me about those, and also these gilded pages.
That's
so good. They're so fucking good.
It is turning out pretty well. I've been wanting to do a big art book for a long time. And coming off the last 2 games I did were very black and white and very gloomy and heavy. If you've opened to the facility, it's dark. And so it's just so nice to just roll out something that just has all the colors of the rainbow, and to just spend a few hours in the evening digging around museum gallery sites and looking at all those great Goya paintings from the courtrooms, from Hans Holbein, who painted in the Henry era, and all the books of hours and books of days that the royals would have in those days, kind of the tail end of the illuminated manuscript era. So we really wanted to make something that had a bit of that sort of storybook vibe, a little bit of that like actual artifact from the period, and a little bit like just like a glossy pamphlet from a museum exhibition. So every art piece is the royal court painting of that character, and every page is going to be a slightly unique, in some way or another, presentation of that vines and flowers curlicue that may have gone by this point. And hopefully, as many pages as possible will have a weird medieval guy, because I've been wanting to draw those guys forever. And so if you have any good weird medieval guys you'd like to recommend right now, Ryan, I'm all ears. We can put one in.
I wish, there's a Twitter that I follow somewhere, and all they do is post medieval monsters, and it's a fantastic to follow. It might even be medieval monsters, but it's something like that. But they find all the weird, things in there, like the devils poking people in the buttholes and stuff. Like just the, what kept people occupied, I guess, back in the time. But yeah, excited. They look absolutely stunning. The piece that I've seen, and yeah, they're all rolling through here with like the split, and one is a full page illustration, and then the other side has the gilding. It looks absolutely stunning. The game looks gorgeous.
Yeah, I was putting together some preview layouts like last night, actually. And like it wasn't until I was doing that and putting the test, I was like, holy shit, this game's gonna look amazing. Damn.
Yeah,
also, there's not a lot of room for my words, so I'm going to start cutting stuff.
More pages.
We're talking about maybe widening up the box. I should.
No more pages. This is the problem. Ryan, you don't understand. This has been a constant back and forth between me and Galen throughout the entire project, being like, Galen's like, hey, we can make it like a big book. It could be like 70 pages. Like, Galen, no, it has to be a zine. It has to be like 48 pages. We can do this.
Hey, listen, technically Zine Max is what, like 73? I'm just saying. It'll be a weird fat thing that sits funny on your shelves, pushing all the other zines away from it, but it technically can be stapled together. One of the other aspects of the game is playbooks. Talk to me about those. Are those like, I know Blades and et cetera, is of the PBTA genealogy. Is it like that, or how do they come into play as far as the game goes?
Yeah, so I think there's 5 or 6 at the moment. And they are like the people you expect to be at the court of a monarch. So you have like the inkpot, which could be like a lawyer or like a scribe or like maybe even a poet. You got the fool, some sort of like doctor / occultist person. And basically each one describes like the various the positions you would hold, and like a suite of moves and relationships and contexts you can use to define the world. So we try to do like very light on world building, where we imply that there is a big like fantasy world out there, but it's mostly up to the players to describe like what they want to highlight, or like if you even just want to like put in your own fantasy world you already have, you can pretty much sub in whatever you want. But yeah, there's like different nations, and like magic is kind of like a recent thing. Hints of like there was a cataclysm in the past and magic suddenly appeared, and like all sorts of shit happened because of that. And so you'll have like possessions you can mark and relationships that kind of define your character's signature looks, that couldn't like just be a guy, or like someone that has antlers and a bunch of fur. Or maybe you're a bird. And yeah, a lot of the moves are, like I said before, like ways you gain and spend tokens, trade tokens between players that usually have to do with your area of expertise. Like the inkpot is mostly about like laws and stories and like keeping track of debts and stuff like that. And also everyone has a sort of revolutionary move, which is kind of like possible end game, possible, hey, we've had enough of this damn monarch. Because like when Galen first pitched this, I was looking through the notes, I was basically kind of the opinion, was like, at some point you're gonna get sick of these motherfuckers, right? Like At some point, you're going to be like, okay, enough is enough. We have to do something about this.
This is something that has historical precedence. Quite a
Yes.
few times. Speaking of Cromwell's.
And so yeah, I literally had like a little bit in my notes, be like, what to do when you're sick of the monarch.
Mhm.
And so that's translated is like a revolutionary move. So the inkpot can like, if you can manage to like hoard a bunch of tokens and resources, you can spend them all at once. And they say, okay, I am rewriting the laws of Kier, this like fantasy nation where it takes place in. And ask what your quest is like, okay, who is left out? Who does this benefit? Who suffers? And like majority of moves, it's only about like spending or gaining a single token at a time. With revolutionary moves, it's like 10 tokens, which means like you have to take significantly not only from the other courtiers at court, but like from the nation itself. Like you are draining it of resources to do this thing. So that works as a possible like end state for the game, or like maybe that's the end of your first season and you can like see what happens afterwards. But the game needed a way, I think, like a release valve to basically be like, hey, we're done. Like it's time for the guillotine. It's time for whatever the hell. Like we need to make major reforms so like the nation can still survive and people can still survive. So
Just like real
I'm really
life.
excited about that. Yeah, exactly. Just like real life.
And it will come with a cost, much like in real life. So there will probably be players who will find themselves in that uncomfortable position of, well, maybe we should just put somebody else on the throne. Like we've created all these fictional people and we're endeared to them now. It'd be a shame to see the streets run with blood. I can tell that if Michael and I were playing, we would probably be bouncing off each other a bit already on that too. That is, I'm definitely down to overthrow the monarchy, but oof, you say you want a revolution.
Yeah, I think I'd lean towards Michael's camp. I think we'd be 2v1 there.
My pacifism is holding me back. Apologies, fellas.
One thing you said during that is this magical cataclysm, right? So what made you want to put like magic and a more fantasy kind of aspect into a game that feels like a lot more political intrigue and like that? Was there just like another element to like the character creation, or does magic like come in a lot into the gameplay itself and you wanted to pull that in? What was the impetus for bringing that in?
For me, it was like the first bits of art Galen was sharing was very much of like fantastical people. So it was like, humans as we understand them, but it was also like a bird that had a great hat. And like the art for the champion is like a horse guy who like is doing his best. I love him dearly. And so it's kind of like just assumed that like it would be like it is like kind of like 1500s England, but there's magic, so you can like be a bit more fanciful. I also feel like that gives a little bit of a remove from history so that people can feel like they can play around a lot more. And also, I think this is one of the reasons I like Cyberpunk so much is because a lot of it is like if the level of technology rises to that extent, suddenly the poor and the rich are on a little bit of more of an even playing field. And in fantasy, I think that's also true. Like if magic is something in the mix, then people don't have to put up with the nobles' bullshit anymore, right? Because if that, it depends on your magical system, but like if the level of power is like evened that way, it can like let people like our courtiers have a lot more leeway in like managing things. And also is like fun to like hint that like, hey, there used to be like a huge empire and this emperor, and then the cataclysm happened and that shattered. And now there's a republic nearby that doesn't have a monarchy or like a much different hierarchical power structure. And that's starting to like influence how things might happen in Kier. Like, might have friends who are from the Gantz Republic and like they're talking about like, elections and shit like that. And that again puts more pressure on this hierarchical monarchy, which depending on like how you play Fealty might be the only monarchy in the world left after the cataclysm, right?
Right.
So it kind of like gives players a bit more freedom. That's also just like I'm sure Galen be like it's fun to draw horse guys and birds with awesome hats, right?
That's certainly part of it. I won't lie. I do love to put a hat on a bird. It's just one of the rarest joys of being an illustrator. But there's a thing that happened when I was making Crash Cart and was testing it out with people is that most people did not know enough about being a doctor to really feel like they had a lot to say. And it caused a lot of players to clam up because most of us have not worked as EMTs. I haven't worked as an EMT. So reading a lot of medical journals doesn't get you there, and it doesn't put you in the shoes of that thing. But when you can glue some cyberpunk around it, that gives a lot of people license to draw from the materials that they know, and you can kind of speak to them in the nerd world that they live in. And I'm hoping by including the more fantastical elements, in addition to everything that Michael just said, and giving everybody freedom to play around in their own earth, their own world, by throwing in wizards and talking animals, you're communicating with the players. This is something you can put your hooks into if you, for example, have not read Wolf Hall or have not spent a lot of time in studying Renaissance politics. I don't know that anybody needs to go read Machiavelli before they play this. Wouldn't hurt, but I don't think we should let it gives them a fantasy world that is familiar enough that they can grab onto that part.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It makes sense. I mean, especially the part that you said about setting it aside from history a little bit, because I think there could be some people that are a little bit tentative to really play in specific historical things, as opposed to a little bit of a generalized. So it's nice to shift it into more of a story place than a historical place. But yeah, the mechanics all just in general. This is one of the other things I really like about Michael, your work, and obviously Galen, your work as well. But it's I know you specifically said, Michael, about the mechanics is the clean through lines of everything. Like, especially when I first read Merger, it was just, that's one of the things, is it just feels very clean. Like all the mechanics really speak to itself. All the mechanics reinforce so many aspects of play. So it's just a really nice thing that you have in your kind of repertoire of mechanical knowledge. Just this consistent, clean elegance to game design. And I don't know, some of that comes from, I mean, so here's the thing. Blades is not my favorite game. I think that's the nicest thing I'll say about it. But I love Forged in the Dark games. I absolutely love them. Like I love Forged in the Dark stuff, and then I read Blades and was like, how did this have this? But it is the core dice mechanic is one of the things I really do love about it. So do you think there's anything that I know you said Blades kind of pulled you back in. Do you think there's anything about like the elegance of the Blade system that you feel you incorporated into your overall game design concepts? Or is it just like an attention to detail that keeps everything kind of like simple, but not in a bad way, like clean and elegant?
Yeah, I think Blades of the Dark and Forge in the Dark games in general, I think it shares this with Powered by the Apocalypse games as well, as they're all fantastic genre emulators, right? So you can look at any of the influences in Blades of the Dark, like Peaky Blinders, and The Wire and stuff like that, and like almost see the mechanics on screen, right? It's like, okay, that was clearly a mixed success. That was clearly an entanglement. This is downtime. I think that really helps when you're translating that to other genres, because I mean, the way I tend to design games, I watch a bunch of stuff that is the thing I'm trying to emulate, right? So for Merger, I watched Michael Clayton, which is one of my favorite movies. And like there was another one that was about the 2008 financial crisis that had a weird title, Margin Call.
Mm-hmm.
What was that? And like documentaries about it and stuff like that, and like trying to like keep track of those moments that keep happening and try to figure out a way I can slot that into the game so that when you're playing it, you are going to make those same kind of moments happen. And in Fealty, I don't know, we're playing with a very different system. It's the belonging outside belonging system, but like in the moves and stuff. And there's also a mechanic we have right now called the contested draw, which is basically if there's any, like, if people are doing something like really risky or like is up to fate, like you're trying to like assassinate somebody or like lead a siege or, set up a poisoning or like this huge, like important diplomatic action between nations, you'll have to draw cards from the deck and like call a certain suit. So like if me and Galen were at odds against each other, we're both trying to like have our plans of action enacted. I would name a suit, Galen names a suit, a different suit, and we pull cards from the deck until we hit one of those suits. And for every card that doesn't match one of those suits, that's more complications we have to deal with. So that can create like incoming threats. There are some like clocks, other like tick up and stuff like that. And so that's a great way of doing that kind of like mixed success, like the 7-9, 4-5 result in PBTA and Forges of Dark games of like when you are doing something risky, you are introducing more challenges and obstacles into the fiction. And so that's like one of the bigger parts of like trying to grab those parts of these genres of stuff like Wolf Hall or even like Blackadder, which is another kind of like touchstone for me working on this, is like nothing's ever clean. Like nothing is ever like you're not here to be a hero, right? You are here to manage an awful situation. And the fun of it is seeing how these people are changed and how the world is changed by it. So yeah, I think that's kind of like my influences and like how I'm trying to streamline the design as much as possible.
And a lot of the moves growing out of that, powered by the Apocalypse framework and going into Belonging Outside of Belonging, and say in all the other excellent variations of that, like Wanderhome, you're doing a lot of not just collaborative world building, but collaborative character building. There's a lot of more so even than in any other system, and that's one of the things that really drew me to Forged in the Dark and PBTA and Belonging Outside of Belonging, is that everybody's kind of co-directing, co-writing the story in a way that was so different from anything I'd experienced in the more trad game world when I was younger. And it's just it pushes you to, and I apologize to whoever said it first because it might not have been John Harper, but it was John Harper who said, drive your character like a stolen car. And I really always want to make games where you just thrust them in, they immediately start figuring out who they are as they play, and they know that when the session's over, when the game's over, it's okay for your character to have been dragged off to the headsman or to have perished while inciting a mob down by the Capitol, because it was a damn good story.
Yeah. The folks in the Blades of Dark Discord actually did like a deep dive on that quote, trying to figure out where it came from. And the only thing I remember, I think it was originally Avery Alder. It was somewhere in Monster Hearts or Monster Hearts 2. And I think that it was actually about like talking about the NPCs specifically, which is a weird, like how it's been like, lost in translation. But yeah, very much that kind of feeling of like, I am so much more drawn to games that are about having like a bad time than about like heroic fantasies or wish fulfillment, because I had my fill of that with D&D. Like maybe I'll go back to it at some point, but like I am much more here for like very complicated characters that you can kind of like empathize with, right? Like I don't need to be a paladin fighting for good anymore. I want the gray. I want the awful like devil's bargains and shit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I definitely ran way too much 5e. The OC generator, and
exactly.
Yeah, that's a quote from Christian Schwell. I'll make sure I always give them credit for that. But I love games where I don't even have a name because I know I'm just gonna die. You know what I mean? So it's nice to do something a little different. Kickstarter though. Kickstarter? Backer kit? Yes. Crowdfunder? Kickstarter. We're going to Kickstarter for ZineQuest. ZineQuest, for those, I mean, this is why we're doing like 30 episodes this month, to talk about people who are putting out great project. Not this month, just over the 2 months.
Oh, thank God.
No, we've only...
I was worried for you.
This is only like 15 or 16 this month. ZineQuest is coming up in February. It is, Kickstarter's very meager, mostly forgotten attempt to encourage indie creators to put out zines and whatnot. And this is what this project is for. I know that you're like, it has to be a zine. So we're doing it for ZineQuest. So come to Kickstarter, I believe. Will you tell me when is it actually going to be on Kickstarter?
It is going to be on Kickstarter February 1st at, I think I'm going to try to push the button at 9 a.m. PST. So that's when I usually do it. So Yeah, it's gonna be February 1st. It's gonna run for 2 weeks. So I'll be over February 15th
Hmm.
in the evening at some point. Yeah.
Gotcha. And why a little 2 weeker?
That's like a good. That's how I run
Hmm.
Kickstarter campaigns. Like, I don't know. I started like, I think the advice that was kind of floating around is like, you don't get much more in a month than you would just in 2 weeks anyway.
Hmm.
That's a lot less like, you don't have to sit with the anxiety of running something on Kickstarter for a whole month, which is very real.
The sooner
Um,
it's done and funded, the sooner we can get to making it the most beautiful thing we can. Like it'll be good to have that phase out of the way and onto the real meat and potatoes of the job.
yeah, that was another part. It's like is the sooner you end it, the sooner you get your money. Basically, like people I don't know, like after your Kickstarter ends, there's like a solid 2 weeks before you get the funds. And I do this for a living, so like I need to like make sure I have my bills paid and like rent and stuff like that. So 2 weeks just makes it a lot more manageable, a lot easier to plan around. Um, and yeah, that's
Yeah. So what can people expect from the Kickstarter? Are you guys gonna have like a bunch of tiers and fancy stuff, or are we keeping it nice and focused?
after talking Galen down from the special like hand like embossed leather copy of the book that he wanted. Yeah, it's gonna be 3 tiers, real simple. I always do like a financial hardship tier, so that'll be like $3 or $5. You don't have a lot to spend. You can still get the digital edition of the game. You'll get early access to it. You'll get all the updates. And then there's a tier for just the digital version. So very similar. You get the PDF through itch.io and drive through RPG. And also just can download it off a link I'll post on the Kickstarter. Again, you get like early access to early drafts and stuff like that. And then we'll have the zine tier where you'll get a incredibly gorgeous printed copy of the game shipped to you anywhere in the world, in addition to the digital downloads and everything else from the previous tiers. So real simple, just 3 tiers, get the
Mhm.
game in various forms. That's it.
Yeah. Love to hear it. Love to see it. Listen, I've only backed many hundreds of Kickstarters. Um, and I love stuff, right? I love all the bits and bobs, but I will say that I love a nice, clean, quick Kickstarter. And I know, Michael, everything I've backed from you is almost always a pretty quick turnaround. You get it in hand like solidly. I mean, there a lot of times it's like by the time the funding actually hits in 2 weeks, you're like, well, I finished it, so I guess I'll print it. It's coming
Yeah.
up. Excited to get Rig. That's coming in soon as well. So it's really nice to see, especially for zines and especially for ZineQuest. A lot of people put a lot of money in this month specifically, and since zines are quote unquote smaller projects, it's nice to not wait 3 years for for a project, for something like this. So that's one of the reasons ZineQuest is one of my favorite months of the year, is just because so many great games. I'm also a person, if you write a 300-page book, I'm I'm gonna buy it, but I'm probably not gonna read it. And I think that 250 pages is probably superfluous. I love zines. I love small games. I love how elegant you can get a system without all the stuff, because I feel like the stuff is why I play the game. I don't need you to tell it to me. Another reason I really love a lot of your stuff, Michael, is just because it is so clean and nice. The facility as well from Galen.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love seeing Kickstarters that are exactly what you're doing here. So it's really nice to see that once again, like a lot of the other stuff that you've done, you're going to continue doing what you do. So it's really nice to see.
Thanks. Yeah. And like another reason I love smaller projects is because it serves as and ZineQuest in general is because it serves as a reminder that like, hey, if you're an indie designer out there, your projects don't have to be like the big, names we all know, right? It doesn't have to be this 200 to 300 page hard cover, huge fucking thing. It can be like a 36-page zine. Like I have lost count in the amount of like first time designers I've seen who was like, hey, I have this like cool thing I'm working on. It's like 500 pages. I'm just like, make something smaller. Like you can still have your big thing down the line, but like you learn so much about the process by having a small thing you can finish and get to the end of, and you can find out all the things you like or might not like about doing something like this. Like you might find like, hey, I really love layout and I hate the writing. Or like, hey, I really love doing the art, but like all like trying to figure out how it all fits and stuff together. I wish I could have like someone else for that. And like you learn so much about the process and yourself by smaller projects with a faster turnaround time. And honestly, like just most people have time for your game if it's a smaller manageable thing. It's so much easier to convince other people to play a game if they can read it in a couple hours, right? If it doesn't remind them of like the textbooks they had to study in university, right? So especially if you're like an indie creator, you don't have a big team with you like a zine and ZineQuest itself, because like Kickstarter really is about its own kind of internal ecosystem. So if you can be part of an event like this, it really helps have more eyes on your project. So I'm always encouraging people, make smaller games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, go Galen, go for it. Yeah.
I just love that we've all been there. And I love the idea of being in that chain that somebody sits down in the morning when the quest begins to go get their coffee or their tea, and then accidentally spams through the 12 links and ends up with a pile of zines. I want to be in the middle of that and be that, not just part of the where somebody says, ooh, that's for me, but also after they've clicked buy, that they still feel they've got enough remaining credit to go after some other indie creators' design after that. It's exciting to be a part of the whole thing then. It's an event.
Yeah, I mean, ZineQuest, especially in the space, is a huge event. I know in the last year or two, Zemo popped in and popped out, and Kickstarter decided to shoot themselves in the foot, but I'm glad it's back in February. I'm glad people are really launching into it, and again, it's the reason we're doing as many episodes as we are. We want to talk to people like you guys who we're big fans of, who have something coming out, and want to try to make sure we get as many eyes on it as possible, because the support for people like you doing the things that you are doing is what is the reason we started this show entirely. So yeah,
thank you. And also I just want to say shout out to you and Hunter for doing the Weekly Scroll and all these shows you do. Like I have learned about so many games I would never have heard of because you featured it here on like a Let's Play or a review. And you all do such a great job of like elevating indie creators and talking about their stuff. And like I mentioned before, like you were one of the first people that like reviewed or even like mentioned Merger outside of like me trying to like get other people to talk about it. And like that kind of like seemingly organic like thing like really helps creators like get some confidence and feel like they aren't screaming into the void, because it can be very lonely work doing this sort of thing. And yeah, the Weekly Scroll has been absolutely fantastic in like elevating people's voices and talking about things that aren't in the mainstream. So thank you. It's been awesome seeing it, and I'm glad to finally be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's great to have you on. It's great to have you both on. I mean, we're definitely going to be talking about more and more stuff from you both as we go forward from here. And talking about that, do you guys, is there anything in the chamber for either of you? Anything post Fealty, or are we just focusing on that right now?
You go first this time, Galen.
That's very fair. Far too many things, in all honesty. After last year, we did that aforementioned Space Doors game, and it went quite well. So with, I don't know if you're familiar with any of the other Breathless game projects, but
the million Fari RPG Breathless project. Yeah. Yeah.
He's such a little tornado of energy. But he and I are working on both a game of space combat. Actually, now it's bifurcating into two different forms of that, a kind of a Han Solo smuggling story and a Battlestar Galactica type game that uses the Breathless engine. And look for that to come sometime later this year. Other than that, I've also done a little bit of art for Spencer Campbell's Luna, one of his ongoing Novaverse games that will be also coming out in this February, I believe.
Yeah.
Beyond
did you do the art on Dusk as well?
I did do the art on Dusk. Is that out now?
Oh, yeah.
I can barely
I believe it just dropped on their store. I think so.
Yeah.
Spencer
The cover is awesome.
Just produced so much so quickly. It's hard to keep up with him.
Chat says it is out. I got to add that to my Spencer Campbell collection. It's over just off screen there.
Oh, wonderful. Well, good. Those are a lot of fun to work on, so I'm glad to see them showing up in people's hands. How about you, Michael?
Yes. So other than Fealty, yeah, we were talking a little bit about Rig. Ryan, your copy is probably, I literally have like hundreds of envelopes stuffed and ready to go next to my feet here. So your copy is probably in there somewhere. So yeah, I'm shipping that. It's my solo Mech Souls-like game, speaking of Spencer Campbell, based on the rune system, which I absolutely fell in love with. And so it's a game about being in a mech and fighting other mechs, and it's a lot of fun. And because the Kickstarter did so well, I am also going to doing a supplement called The Good Ship Tarot, which is like basically Rig takes place on a far distant future of Earth called Recombinant Earth, which is all like just reduced to bones and superstructure. And so Good Ship Tarot is basically like, hey, what if you were a mech on a giant ship that has been in the stars for centuries, and all the weirdness that'll be there. And also I kind of want to do like maybe a multiplayer version where you get to use your mechs and fight other people's mechs, like 1v1 combat, because the 10th anniversary of Titanfall is coming up in March. So I'd love to have some stuff ready to celebrate that, because it's one of my absolute favorite mech video games of all time. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be working on next is, yeah, Fealty, and also more supplements and add-ons for Rig, hopefully. Yeah.
And then where can, for both of you guys, for future projects, for current projects, for everything that's out right now, where can people currently find your stuff? Where can they support you?
Yeah, so for me, my socials are basically all not writing or not writing games. So I'm not writing games on Twitter. You can find my games on notwriting.itch.io. You can support me on Patreon, patreon.com/notwriting. It's the cheapest way to get my games. $1 a month to get everything I self-publish, behind the scenes stuff. You get to vote on stuff I make. Yeah, that's basically where you can find me.
You can find my stuff at either Pejeau on Twitter. Boy, I picked these names back before I knew I was going to be an illustrator or designer, so I apologize. And at Nightjar Games on Itch, where quite a lot of them are very cheap or free if you want to try out what I make.
And obviously, again, we have these guys on the show for reasons, because the stuff they make is fantastic. So you definitely want to go support that. And we'll make sure that all the links are in, you know, all of the beneath wherever you're listening or watching this. So you can just click on that easily and go drop some support for these guys. Fealty coming out February 1st. Very excited for that. Short campaign, 2 weeks. Don't miss it. We'll remind everybody listening every week, all of our quote unquote normal episodes every Thursday. During these 2 months, we're going to do a roundup each time to remind everyone what's still funding and what they should go back. Listen, thank you guys both so much for being here. Michael, like I said, we've been a supporter for a really long time. It's really great to finally have you on the show and talk. And Galen, absolutely love your work and your illustrations as well. Genuinely really appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you very much.
Before we go, could I like highlight a couple of other ZineQuest things that
Please do. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. I just want to mention Death Game by Laurie O'Connell.
Laurie O'Connell.
One of my favorite designers. It's like very much like some kind of awful reality show. We have to kill each other for the entertainment of the rich. So very much politically aligned with Fealty, I think. So yeah, Death Game is coming out in ZineQuest. We mentioned Luna by Spencer Campbell also coming out. I think there's a solo game called The Magus and the Oracle that's also coming out during ZineQuest from Tomatoes, which looks, I just found out about last night. It looks incredible. So just want to shout out those two projects as well in the ZineQuest family.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Lawyer kind of reached out, so we're definitely going to be talking about that project a little bit during one of our roundups. It looks absolutely stunning with the Hodag doing some art for it, so that's definitely something you'll see brought up here in the show as well. And we did art from Tomatoes before. Their layout and art is absolutely stunning, so really excited for Megas too. So those are great call outs for those. But yeah, back all of those. Back Fealty when it drops in like 2 days. If you're listening to this, hopefully I put the episode out before the first. If I didn't, go jump on it right now. But again, thank you guys so much for being here, and that is it for us. We will see everybody later. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.